I'm sure you're coming from a fatherly background. So those of us who are parents, fathers, it's not that easy. It's a great responsibility. It's a great responsibility. And often, if you can get away from that responsibility, why bother going through that difficulty, and challenges, So therefore, again, people get into the discussion of course, that also brings in the discussion of role. Of course, the whole discussion about what is the role of men and women. So the discussion of gender role is a big thing. Gender function, gender role, gender equality, gender justice, gender sensitivity, gender what else? So many things happening nowadays, isn't it? Gender harmony, gender justice, gender fluidity as well, isn't it? So a lot of these things now, of course, the whole discussion, I mean, those who are teachers, they would be even more aware of the whole sort of gender fluidity, gender, all these discussions are now very prominent. If you open up any debates and discussion, there's a lot of discussion about the role of gender. Now, when we say gender fluidity, gender equality, what do you mean by that? I'm sure some of you may be familiar with the whole sort of gender fluidity and children going to schools and not having sort of designated toilets for boys and girls. If you go to marketplaces, again, with John Lewis and others, so they don't want to sort of separate anymore. So this is whole sort of gender fluidity. Gender fluidity is far greater than the LGBT discussion. So the LGBT discussion is that men having relationship with men, women having relationship with women. Okay, so this is the sort of, and then the transgender. But the gender fluidity is far beyond that. According to new research, those who are below 25, they think that LGBT, those who are fighting for the rights of gays and lesbians and so forth, that they are backward. They're traditional people. So they now believe in gender fluidity. And gender fluidity is what? Because they're saying that LGBT is traditional, old school, because they get stuck into one mode of function. Whereas gender fluidity is that you can shift. Today you are this, tomorrow you are that. So those who are under 25, they believe in gender fluidity. Now the reason why I'm just bringing that discussion from a slightly different angle is who decides? Who decides whether to get married or not married, the role and the function and so forth, what is right, what is wrong, who decides? Because when you talk about right and wrong, you can do it and you can't do it, this is when you get into conflict, isn't it? This is when you get into disunity, isn't it? If there was no conflict, if we all agree with something simple, okay. So the question is who decides, and that question, who decides whether it is an internal discussion within the Muslim community or an expertise discussion within the scholars or within the greater, wider community. So who decides? So the question of taqbih and tahseen is the fundamental question. And of course, this question is broadly applicable. And then at the same time, also, when we narrow it down and we try to understand the differences and see what is right and what is wrong, because the difference would be that some are saying this opinion is more right than the other opinion. Okay, so we're not going to go into the discussion of the wider community discussion, who decides, who determines what is right and what is wrong. Because the biggest challenge that humanity is facing now is that whenever any new issue comes up, where do you draw the line? And who draws the line? And this is where the notion of taqbih and tahseen comes in. So taqbih and tahseen is basically who decides what is right and who decides what is wrong. So tahseen comes from hasana yuhassinu tahseen, and taqbih comes from qabbaha yuqabbihu. So qabih is something ugly, something inappropriate, something wrong. So who decides what is wrong and who decides what is right? Now, of course, the other discussion that, can human intellect decide what is right and what is wrong? Now, moving from this discussion, if we want to understand, or if we want to unite ourselves, whether ordinary people or even at scholarly level, the only way we can bring people together when we understand each other better. When you don't understand why others are doing things in a different way, this is when you distance yourself. But when you can understand why people do things like that, then there's a better chance of you and me working together. So inshallah, what I will do, I will briefly touch on 3 points. I will briefly touch on 3 points in relation to the topic. Now, before I start with those 3 points, so I was saying taqbih and tahsin, the concept of what is right and what is wrong. Because humanity, wherever there are people, there's always the notion of right and wrong. You can do this and you can't do this. So the question is, who decides? You can park your car here and you can't park your car there, isn't it? Okay. At home you can't leave your socks everywhere, isn't it? Mom will tell you off. Okay. Or you can't leave your place in the sink, isn't it? So you can't do it and you can do it. So the notion of you can do it and you can't do it, this is part of human life. Wherever there is human beings living together, there has to be some rules. Who can do it and who can't do it. Okay. So this is where the taqwiyah and tahsin comes in. And the humanity, the challenge that humanity is facing, that there is no reference point. Who decides? Who determines? And that is a long discussion. Okay. We are fortunate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with that understanding that we don't need to draw the line. The line is drawn for us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's a comfort. Because it's not easy to work out things in life. Okay, but when you believe in divine guidance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you that understanding. Now, broadly speaking, for our better understanding, that even when you say you can do it and you can't do it, this is haram, this is halal, this is wajib, this is not wajib. Again, to what extent? Is it 20% haram? Is it 40% haram? Is it 80% haram? Someone will argue, hold on, haram, isn't it? You can't say that 20% haram and 40% haram and 80% haram. Haram is haram. Al-halal bayyinun or haram bayyinun, that halal and haram is clear. But yet, there is a degree of differences, okay? So broadly speaking, so there are sort of 5 rulings, okay? And it's about madhahib discussion, so it's not part of any madhahib discussion. So there are broad 5 rulings when we say you can do it and you can't do it. You're allowed to do it, you're not allowed to do it. You can park your car, you can't park your car here. You can use the phone, and you can't use the phone in a gathering, okay? So those 5 rulings, do you want to give it a try? What are those 5 rulings? Now we're talking about purely from Islamic perspective, Sharia perspective. Halal, haram, makruh, mubah. So we're going into now 40% haram, 60% haram, that kind of thing, isn't it? We are familiar with those terms. It's not sort of unknown terms, okay? So if we look at those sort of 5 rulings, let's start in the middle. Let's start with the middle one. What's the middle one? Mubah. Mubah. Why do you say mubah is the middle one?
It's like, you can do it if you want.
Easy going, isn't it? Okay. So mubah is the easy approach, okay? So mubah is something permissible. Okay. So this is why it's also so mubah is permissible. So out of the 5 rulings in the middle, let's start with the easy one, mubah. Mubah is permissible. So eating rice is permissible. Eating PFC, so see, we speak the language of rice, other people speak the language of PFC, isn't it? Okay. So mubah is something permissible. Okay. And then if we take the right, what should we put in the right? Okay, let's take the makruh approach, okay? So let's put makruh on the left hand side, okay? So let's say makruh on the left. So after mubah, if something is not so good, we put it under makruh, okay? And then after makruh, as broad principles, after makruh, what should we do? What should we put? So let's say haram, okay? And then if we take the right approach. So after mubah, the right will be what? Next level will be halal, will be too quick. Okay. So shall we put everything in one category, mandub, which is also mustahab. Okay. So mandub covers everything, which is recommended. Okay. And then after mandub, what? Then let's say wajib. Wajib, fard, obligations. Okay. So these are sort of your broad 5 rulings. And as I mentioned, these are above madhab discussions. Because within the madhab, there are other sort of subcategories. Okay. But broadly speaking, so it's like whatever we do, it will come under any of those 5 rulings. So what we are saying, taqbih and tahsin, what you can do and what you can't do. Okay. So whatever we do, and it gives a very nice approach in life that that whatever you do, you need to find out. It will come under one of those 5 rulings. And the other best thing is that when you take the mubah approach, al-aslu fil ashya mubah, anything in its origin is permissible. It's also about an attitude. See, there are 2 types of attitude. One attitude, everything is haram. That's one attitude, mindset, okay? That everything is kuffar, everyone is against you, everything is haram. That's sort of one mindset. And the other mindset is al-aslu fil ashya mubah, that everything in its origin is permissible. Allah has made it permissible for us. So take a positive approach. Go out in the society. Try to benefit from the society. Give them, take from the society. So your attitude is positive because everything is permissible. Yes, at the same time, if you want to make anything haram, meaning not allowed, then you have to come up with evidences. And if you want to make anything obligatory, you have to come up with evidences. So sometimes easy, simple approach helps you in life. That when you are going through your day-to-day life, take that open approach, easy approach. That Allah has made everything permissible for us. Al-aslu fil ashya mubah. Everything is permissible. But at the same time, if there is something obligation, wajib, that we have to do it, then you have to provide evidence. And if you want to make anything prohibited, haram, then you have to provide evidence. So therefore, before you jump into conclusion of obligation or prohibition, you just need to study and find out, maybe through asking, maybe through learning, maybe through asking scholars, that what is it? Okay, so it helps with their attitude, okay? So just remember those 5 rulings. Now, if we want to understand why there are differences, because of differences, sometimes we don't see the unity, isn't it? Okay, so what are why do the scholars, why do they differ? What are the causes, what are the sort of reasons why they differ? Because if you can understand why, then you can work with people. If you can understand why people do certain things in certain way, then you can work with them. So it's very important that before you jump into conclusion, before you decide that you want to be with them or not to be with them, try to understand why they do things like that. So this is why Islamically, that yes, there are different opinions, but it's important for us as students of knowledge that we always try to understand why the scholars, they differ. Why do they differ? So when you understand why they differ and the reason, then you don't have to agree with that. You don't have to agree with that, but you will appreciate them. So the 3 points I'll mention, and inshallah, that will be the sort of 3 main points of the discussion. So if we want to understand why there are differences and why the scholars differ, then we can work together. If we don't understand, then we can't work together. So there are 3 main reasons why scholars differ. There are many reasons. There are many reasons. I don't like this person, I don't like that person. Sometimes we don't like people, okay? So there are many reasons. But the crux of the matter is that there are 3 main reasons. Number 1 is sihhatul nas. Because our Islamic positions are based on evidences. Okay. Now, the scholars, they use a term called nas. So this is what I'm saying, sihhatul nas. And when I say nas, the literal meaning of nas is text. So the text that you send, we send texts, isn't it? We send text message to WhatsApp and whatnot. Okay. So this is nas, text, and nusus is the plural. Okay. So therefore, the first position we need to understand is the sihhatun nas, the authenticity of the text. Because if anyone tells us that they follow this opinion because Quran and Sunnah is telling them to follow that, isn't it? Often this is how it is. Okay, and that's perfectly fine. So the first thing we need to ask, that is it as simple as that? So when we talk about sihhatun nas, how authentic is your evidence? Now, if we say how authentic your evidence is, we will say that we are following Quran and Sunnah. Is there any doubt in Quran and Sunnah? Do you have any doubt in Quran and Sunnah? In the authenticity of the Quran and Sunnah? There is no doubt, isn't it? We all believe in it, alhamdulillah. Okay. But when we unpack it, then what we will see, that even with the Quran and Sunnah as the main sources of our evidence, is that when we talk about sihhatun nas, how authentic our evidence is, our text is, our message is. Because if your message is not authentic, then your action will be weak, isn't it? So therefore, when we look at how authentic the evidence is, then what we find that the highest text is our Quran. And there is no doubt in our Quran, isn't it? Okay. But when it comes to Quran, again, scholars, when they unpack and look into the evidence, then they look into two areas. Okay. One area is called qat'i and the other area is called dhanni. What it means that the revelation of the Quran, wahi, the nuzul of the Quran, the thubut of the Quran, all this is qat'i, meaning definite. There is no question about it. There is no doubt about it. The Quran was revealed. The Quran was transmitted to us. So the Quran we hear today and the Quran we recite today is the exact same Quran which was revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the revelation and the transmission through mutawatir, recurrent transmission, there is no question about it. So we put the Quran in front of us. But when we read the Quran, when we try to understand the Quran, so the dalalatul nas, the meaning of the text or the meaning of the Quran, then what we find sometimes there are different opinions. So ثلاثة قروء. One verse talks about يتربصن ثلاثة قروء, that when women are divorced, they should wait how long? 3 قروء, ثلاثة قروء. So this is 100% evidence, isn't it? So when we look into the dalalatul nas, the meaning of the word, what is actually meant by quru? Thalatha, we all understand, isn't it? Wahid ithnan thalatha, quite straightforward. When it comes to quru, the Quran is telling us that they should wait 3 quru. What is the meaning of the quru? And this is where scholars will go into difference of opinions. From a linguistical perspective, quru has 2 meanings. Quru has 2 meanings, i.e. the waiting period, i.e. impurity and impurity. It means both. So therefore what happens is that some scholars have taken one meaning and the other scholars have taken the other meaning, and both have their backup, linguistical backup. So Arabic language plays a big role in understanding the text. Because same WhatsApp message, isn't it? But at the receiving end, different people are understanding differently. Okay, so text is same, but understanding is different. So there are some legitimate reasons. So when we look at that, just one example, thalatha quru. Now, on the other hand, for example, yes, mi'atu jalda, 100 stripes, again regarding the punishment. So when you have a the word mi'a, 100, there is no room for saying 99 or 101, isn't it? It's quite clear cut. 100. So that is qat'i. The revelation transmission is qat'i, and the meaning is also definitive. But when we look at another example, ثلاثة قروء, then the quru has two meanings. So this becomes what? Dhanni. Now when we say dhanni, it comes from the dhan. And the dhan is a problematic word. Dhan is a problematic word. Meaning that when we say that dhan is your assumption. And the assumption could be different, isn't it? So this is why Imam Malik, when he was asked, he used to say, Inna dhunnu illa dhannan wa ma nahnu bimustayqinin. Inna dhunnu illa dhannan wa ma nahnu bimustayqinin. We only assume. We can never be sure. So whenever we think about something, our perception is based on assumption. Okay. So we think, we assume. So when we say that a verse is dhanni, dalil, speculative evidence, we don't mean that it's an assumption. What we mean that there is room for interpretation. There is room for more than one interpretation. There is room for more than one interpretation. So two interpretations say that the word has both meaning, impurity period and impurity period, from a linguistic perspective. So therefore scholars have different. And you will see that and in divorce ruling, the Hanafis differ from the Shafi'is and Malikis, in terms of the time period. Okay, and that's a long discussion. So therefore, if we just try to understand that one point, sihhatun nas, the authenticity of the evidence, how authentic your evidence is. You can't just simply say, I follow Quran and Sunnah. You can't just simply say, I follow Quran and Sunnah, because those opinions are coming from Quran and Sunnah. Okay, so the example I gave, that one would argue from the Quran that the meaning of this verse is that is not what you are saying. And there is a legitimate room for that. Meaning that so the revelation and transmission is qat'i, there is no question about it. But when it comes to looking into meanings, there will be verses and topics and words which will have more than one meaning. Now the question is, if it has more than one meaning, what do we do? Can we attack someone that why do you follow the other opinion and don't follow my opinion? Yes, you might need to establish that is the other person or is the other group also following a legitimate opinion. Okay. So therefore, what the scholars do, that when there is any word which has dhanni meaning, speculative meaning, they need to come to a decision, a conclusion. Okay. So ghalabatul dhann, so the dhann is that assumption, which is the right meaning. So the scholars are differing, which is the right meaning? Is it this meaning or that meaning? And that process to extract the right meaning is the process, is the scholarly process, the ijtihad process, the scholars, the fiqh process, the usuli process, that they will extract the right meaning. Okay. Now, you know what? We all do that in our day-to-day life. We are all mujtahidun. Okay. We all do ijtihad every day. So in the morning you wake up and decide, what should I wear this or should I wear that? Should I do this or should I do that? We go through that, isn't it? We don't. Ask moms, they do a lot of juggling. Okay. That shall we do this or shall we do that? So this is that process that you've got two options in front of you and you're juggling. So of course in a day-to-day life, it's just you're thinking and deciding what to do. But on a scholarly level, when there are two opinions and there are evidences and different meanings, this is when they kind of juggle with it, they grapple with that. That what is the right opinion? So therefore, and they will of course apply principles to draw a conclusion, to extract a conclusion. And therefore you will see that there is a process they go through and they will extract. And of course, when you are sort of dealing with assumption, dhann, which is the right opinion, you're grappling with that. And then eventually you will take an opinion. So this is called ghalabatul dhann or it's also called Rujahan al-Dhan. The scholars, they will look at verses and hadith, and they will sort of grapple with that and say, which is the better opinion. And at the end of the day, they will be sort of grappling with it, and they will take an opinion. And the Rujahan al-Dhan or Ghalabat al-Dhan is the higher probability or overriding assumption. When you have two options, you override, you go for one of them, and they do that. And this is where, now this whole process is very important to understand, that without that process, you will not understand the conclusion scholars draw. I'll give a quick example and then we'll move on, inshallah. I always say that it's very important that before we jump into conclusion and speak against scholarly opinions, it's very important that we understand, because often we try to sort of read one or two verses of hadith and extract meaning and think that we've got it. Life doesn't work like this, because Quran, Sunnah, it's simply, you cannot access it like this. If I give you a different example, don't take it sort of literally, that Quran, Sunnah is like the raw data. Quran, Sunnah is like the raw data. What is raw data? What, should I give another example? Please don't use those examples, okay? Raw meat. Can you eat raw meat? No. You can't eat raw meat, isn't it? What do you need to do? Well, cooking is one word. Process it. It's the same cooking. Process it, and then it becomes what? Palatable. We can consume it. Okay. Likewise, I say, don't take it literally, but to understand the concept, Raw data is not for public, isn't it? Raw data, specialists will take the raw data and they will process it, and then they will produce as information. And then we will use that information to make policies and whatnot. Okay. So what I'm trying to say, that Quran Sunnah is our foundation. It's not for anyone to go in and sort of access it and take a verse and take a hadith and start giving opinions and fatwas. It needs to be processed, the whole usuli approach, usul al-fiqh and so forth, that the scholars will, because the Quran is this main source, we need to extract. Remember I said 5 rulings? Halal, haram, and makruh, those things. So we need to extract that from the main sources, but it requires a process. Okay, so therefore that process has to be in place. So if the raw meat is cooked by the backdoor chef and an internationally renowned chef, there will be difference in taste, isn't it? Because they're expert in their process. The mixing is very important. So this is where how you mix the Quran, Sunnah, and the usuli principles, how you mix it up, and then you present it as points, then you can understand that too. So therefore, try to understand is that that there is a greater process, and we all need to be learning those processes so that we have better understanding. Right. So I'll finish off with the last 2 points. The first point was Sihhatun Nas, how authentic. Now the point we can conclude on the first point is that where there is legitimate difference of opinions, you've got to respect that. You may not agree with it, you may not be able to understand that opinion, but you must have respect for that opinion. So if the scholars are differing with the legitimate differences, which you need to establish before you draw your conclusion, then you may not follow that opinion. That's fine. You may not understand that, but have respect for that opinion. So when you have that understanding, even if you don't follow that opinion, you will still have respect for that. Second point, you've got your text, isn't it? In your WhatsApp messages. Okay, so we talked about that how authentic the text is. The text from you or someone hacked your account and sending a text. So that's a different angle, isn't it? And then you've got your text. What is your understanding of the text? Now I started with the story of Banu Qurayza. And what did I ask you? The first question I asked you, what was the question? Were they following Sahih Hadith. And you all agreed, isn't it? There's no doubt about it. All of them, they heard by themselves, isn't it? So they were following the most Sahih Hadith. What is Sahih Hadith? That there's no question about, isn't it? So they heard, they followed the Sahih Hadith, yet they ended up doing what?
Different things.
Different action. Any quick thought, how did that happen in that incident? Remember the Banu Qurayza, they marched on the way. One group said, we have to pray, time is running out, and the other group said, the Prophet ﷺ said, until we reach the destination, we can't pray. Any quick thought? Understanding of the text. So they differed in understanding the text. As I mentioned, you might have 250 people in your WhatsApp group, isn't it? But the text is read by those people in different ways. They would draw different conclusions. Okay. And subhanAllah, do you know what? When this was reported to the Prophet ﷺ, the incident, and guess what? He approved both of them. If he had approved one group and disapproved the other group, we would have found a formula, a process, a method, that this is how we should extract. But he approved both the groups. Okay. Now, the result was that, one group thought the Prophet said not to pray until we reach destination. So they carried on. They did exactly what the Prophet ﷺ instructed. What did the other group thought? The other group thought that it's a rapid response team. Okay. The Prophet ﷺ wanted this group to rush, go quickly, not to delay, because they need help. They need help. So, if they sort of hang around here and make wudu and then salah and nafal and everything, they will be killed. So he meant quick, rapid response team. Go quickly. Don't hang around here. Go and pray there. Sometimes we say, it's okay, there's not enough time, go and pray there. So what was meant here that, the response must be quick, rapid. So they thought, we tried. We tried to live quickly. What can we do now? Now time is running out. If we don't pray, we will miss the prayer. So can you see? And they are what? Scholars, Sahaba, companions. But the understanding was different. So of course this is in the Usuli term, they call it Fahimul Khitab and the Zahirul Khitab. The literal meaning and then the deeper meaning. Okay. So I always say that there is no four madhab, there's only two madhab. Okay. Meaning that Allah has created us like this. Some people they take the message in a kind of literal way, in a simple way. Others they've got complicated mindset, so they want to find out what's in it. They want to find out the deeper meaning. Meaning, what is the intended message? What is the intended message? Now, the beauty of the Prophet's conclusion that both exist. There's nothing wrong with that. And we should have respect for both. We should have respect for both. Some will take literally. Others will want to understand why. And why is a big question. Why is a big question. And that why also comes with many principles. Okay. And this is where, of course, it's not that why by anyone, by scholars. So they have principles to look into what is the why. And therefore, broadly speaking, for us to understand, if we sort of take that understanding away with us, that any evidence, Quran, Sunnah, will have those two approaches. The Zahir approach and the Fahimul Khitab approach. Okay. So therefore, some people will be taking more of the Zahir approach, the literal approach, and others would want to find out what is the intended meaning, what is the intended message. And this is where what we need to understand is that it's about having respect for both dimensions, both approaches. It's not about accepting or rejecting. You can accept, you can reject, but having that respect. Okay, so it exists, and it's not anything new. And of course, under this, there are many other points, so I will move on to the third point, inshallah, and I'll conclude with that. The last point, on the second point, Fahimul Nas, what is your understanding of the text? And this is where illah plays a big role. And when I say illah, I mean that for any ruling, there's always why. For any ruling, there's always why. And to determine what is that why is very important. And of course, this is where, it's not our job, Tom, Dick and Harry saying this is the why. It is a scholarly job that the scholars would determine, identify why this ruling, what is the why behind that ruling. Because the reason why it's important to know why, because if the why exists, the ruling exists. And if the why doesn't exist, the ruling doesn't exist. So these are rising intellectually other points that which requires more unpacking. That the reason why illah plays a big role, that for all the ahkams, there is, meaning for all the why, like you can't leave your socks here and you can't leave your plates unwashed in the kitchen, okay, there's always why. So we need to understand why, okay, and if we don't understand why, we can't understand the differences, okay. Now, and when you can understand why, then you will see that sometimes that the ruling evolves around why with the illah. If the why is there, ruling is there. If the why is not there, the ruling is not there. Okay. This is for higher level discussion to understand why scholars they differ. Last but not the least, what was the last? I said 3 points, isn't it? Sihhatun Nas, Fahmun Nas, the authenticity of the text, understanding of the text. What should be the last one? Make a good guess, what should be the last point? If all the discussion is based around Nas, and when we say Nas, we mean Wahi, we mean Dalil, we mean Quran, we mean Sunnah. This is what it means, So first we said we want to see how authentic it is. Secondly, we said we want to see what is the understanding of that. What should be the last one? The last one is Tanzilun Nas, or let's say the application of the text. You've got your evidence, you've understood it. Now, how do you apply that in a given circumstance? So, Tanzilun Nas fil Waqi'. So, the application of the text, and that is very important, the last point. Sometimes you will apply something which will contradict your understanding. You looked at the situation. You looked at the situation, and therefore, you say, no, the application should be different. Okay. Now, of course, one of the examples, two Sahaba asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One old Sahaba asked that, can you kiss his wife in Ramadan? The Prophet said, what? Yes. And then one young Sahaba asked the Prophet, can you kiss his wife in Ramadan? The Prophet said, no. Okay. So one would say, hold on, changing the goalpost, isn't it? Same question, but two different answers. So the application was different because of the circumstance. Okay. Right. Now, when we talk about the application, we need to understand two things. We need to understand An-Nas, and we need to understand Al-Waqi'. The text and the context. The text and the context. If we don't understand the context, then we'll always be in difficulties. Okay. So, what we see is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sending his prophets, isn't it? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he sends his prophets from among the people. And this is why the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam, رَبَّنَا وَبَعَثْ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِنْهُمْ. Send a messenger from among them. What is the difference? What difference would it make if you have someone from within and someone from outside? we are what? We are foreigners, isn't it? So we are not seen as part of this indigenous community. Islam has to come from within. So you see all the prophets, with no exception, all the prophets were sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِلَى مَدْيَنَ أَخَاهُمْ شُعَيْبًا وَإِلَى ثَمُودَ أَخَاهُمْ شُعَيْبًا وَإِلَى عَادٍ أَخَاهُمْ هُودًا. All the prophets, they went, they were born and brought up within their community, and they were raised, and then they were given the prophethood. And then they said what? Ya qawmi. Ya qawmi. So they said, وَإِلَى مَدْيَنَ أَخَاهُمْ شُعَيْبًا وَإِلَى ثَمُودَ أَخَاهُمْ. All of them, they said, Ya qawmi. Oh my people. Is that, do you sense anything when you say, oh my people?
Okay.
What?
Okay. Sincerity.
Sincerity is, they could have said, these are kuffars, isn't it? They could have said, these are kuffars. It's the attitude. So they were saying, Ya qawmi, oh my people. They sincerely wanted good for them, isn't it? There's a love and affection in them. They say, oh my people. Although they were what? They were kuffar, isn't it? Okay. So it's also important that we understand the context. And context doesn't only mean the language, it's understanding the culture, language, and the lingo. Okay. All these things is important to understand. Now, so these are 3 points, and I'll conclude with these 3 points, that if we understand those 3 points, then we will understand that sometimes scholars may differ legitimately, rightfully. And if they differ because of legitimate reasons, then we may not accept that opinion, we may not understand that opinion, we may not agree with that opinion, but we must have respect for that opinion. Because it's about unity of purpose and not about a uniformity of opinions. 2 different things. Unity of purpose, and it's not about uniformity of opinions. Opinions you can't unite. Allah has created us with an inquisitive mind, isn't it? With an inquisitive mind, and therefore, so I was saying before that that there is always why for all the rulings. When it comes to with Allah, there is no why. Allah said pray 5 times, pray 5 times. They don't say why 5, why not 6. But when it comes to interactions, there is why. Because if you want to carry someone else, you have to convince them. So this is where why comes in. So it's important that we understand that, that our unity of purpose is important and not uniformity of opinions. What I mean by unity of purpose, that we are here for a purpose. And that purpose is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we're all worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no problem with worship, So we pray 5 times, whether you pray Maghrib or Isha or Fajr, 4 rak'at, 2 rak'at, a reading, Salah, Ruku, Sujood, all this is unity of purpose. There are small, minor difference of opinions, whether to raise your hands or not to raise your hands, whether to raise your finger or not to raise your finger. Do you think Allah's Jannah will go up and down with your hands and with your finger? It's very important to understand. Don't think that you're pious either way, whether you're raising or not raising. Allah's Jannah is far greater than that. It's linked with the greater purpose. Allah's Jannah will not go up and down with your hands and with your fingers. So these are minor differences. It will not change us, and it should not divide us. Okay, because our overall purpose, we are in a journey collectively together. We're in a journey and we're heading towards that. The purpose of our existence is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we are all connected in the ibadah of Allah. We're heading towards the end of life. We will die, and inshallah we'll go to Jannah and so forth. And we want everyone to go to Jannah. So therefore it's not about small differences. Those differences will be there. It's okay. It's about unity of purpose. Jazakallah for listening attentively. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us better understanding of differences, and also gives us the tawfiq to gain more knowledge, so that inshallah we understand better and we serve the ummah better, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.
Jazakallah khair to the Sheikh for the talk on unity and differences. We've got just a few minutes left, so we can have maybe one or two questions. So any brothers, they ask any questions?
Yeah, normally say I don't like to be asked, I like asking. I don't like to be commissioned, I like commissioning. But because you raised the hand, so you can ask. Otherwise, I would have asked.
So if someone follows a difference of opinion, you can't say to that person that he's doing a munkar. Like, for example, if there's something between haram and halal, you can't say to that person that they're doing the evil thing, or like, encouraging. Would that be considered as?
No, there's a difference between someone doing munkar and someone following a different opinion. Okay, so this is where, of course, if someone is doing munkar, then munkar is munkar. Okay, but if someone is following a different opinion, then this is where the difference is. Okay, so therefore we need to understand that are they doing something haram, or are they also following, let's say, an opinion which I may not subscribe to that, but Dawah sort of a basis for that opinion, whereas I see that it's not good for me. Okay, and I can give you a good example of the whole free mixing discussion. Okay, so it's where you draw the line, and some people draw the line in different places. Okay, so for example, having a separate meeting, having a joint meeting, so all those things is where you draw the line. Okay, so therefore it's important that we understand that if something is outrightly haram, then of course it's haram. But if someone is following another opinion, and especially mainstream opinion, then we can't really say because this is where the problem with the challenge is, that your understanding and their understanding is differing, because their understanding is different from your understanding, so this is where the difference is, So for example, recently I was talking to someone, okay, so the whole discussion about, for example, wearing trousers above the ankle. Okay, so again, for example, you'll see many scholars wearing regular trousers, others wearing sort of above the ankle. Now, the good practice is above ankle, but when it comes to these things, then you will see that the illah comes in, the why comes in. The why comes in, okay. So, for example, the conclusion is that, on any subject, scholars will gather all the hadith and all the verses and try to understand what was the reason for that prohibition. The prohibition still exists, but it carries a different thing, because at that time, the Quraysh, they used to wear sort of gowns, and they used to trail. It was a status. It was a status. Okay, if someone does that now, they will be the same sinful. Because any practice, do you know anyone doing that? So if you're wearing a regular trouser, it doesn't represent anything. You're not saying I'm great, I've got something, it's just a normal thing. Of course, if you're sweeping the floor, that's a different discussion, Whereas even now, the hadith is still applicable. But you have to find why it was prohibited, and is the why still here? Any why exists anymore, do you know? I'll give you a quick example. When the queen trails her, when the queen is parading,
Yes.
trading, as a status. This is where, this is khuyala. So the haughtiness and this is what is the illah. So if you're doing that, then yes, hadith is still applicable. Okay. So this is where understanding could be. Now again, I'm saying, when I say understanding, not individuals understanding, scholarly understanding. So therefore, your role would be, okay, is there a scholarly understanding on that issue? If so, then if there's no scholarly understanding, everyone giving their own opinions, Tom, Dick, and Harry saying this, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
Jazakallah khair. So inshallah we will conclude now. We are running out of time. There's some food inshallah for you brothers to eat. There's two announcements to make. One is we hold this gathering, this event every month, the first Sunday of the month. So inshallah, do keep that in your diaries, do remember, and if you do come, inshallah, bring your family, your friends, and invite others to come, and there's going to be you'll get reward from whatever they learn. And secondly, we have a donation box inside, so inshallah, if you can, whatever you can give, it will be beneficial for you and for us. So jazakallah khair. Inshallah, can we end with a dua?
اللهم آمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وقنا عذاب القبر وقنا عذاب الحشر وقنا عذاب الميزان. رب اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. رب توفنا مسلما والحقنا بالصالحين. إن تعذبهم فإنهم عبادك وإن تغفر لهم فإنك أنت العزيز الحكيم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. اللهم إنا نسألك من فضلك العظيم وخيرك العميم يا جواد يا كريم. اللهم أعطنا ولا تحرمنا وأكرمنا ولا تهنا وزدنا ولا تنقصنا وصلنا ولا تقطعنا وآثرنا ولا تؤثر علينا واهدنا ويسر الهدى لنا. اللهم إنا نسألك إيمانا كاملا ويقينا صادقا وعملا متقبلا وتوبة صادقة قبل الموت وراحة عند الموت ومغفرة ورحمة بعد الموت. اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم أصلح قلوبنا واستر عيوبنا واغفر ذنوبنا وأحسن خاتمتنا يا رب العالمين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.